Hello YouTube friends. This is a video that I'm sure you guys probably will skip, or not watch to the end at the very least, but at this point it's become a ritual to make a video for my yearly date with Hyunsuk. No matter how long or short the video ends up becoming, it's very important for me to talk about it since Hyunsuk himself is a very important individual for me, as well as the fact 4 years is quite a long bit of time. Though naturally when you're spending this time admiring a person you hold close to your heart, it doesn't feel long, but here we are, 4 years after initially finding him, and I still feel as strongly as I had been feeling back then. And don't get me wrong in any way, every milestone is important, but I think 4 years feels like one of those big ones, because when you think about it, I've known my current best friend for 8. So I've known Hyunsuk about half of the time I've known her, but even she couldn't help me in some of the same ways Hyunsuk has. Of course, how long you've been a fan doesn't determine your worth as a fan, but I do think the longer you stick by them, the more you appreciate and love them, and of course, you grow more used to their presence. But a part of my conscience always makes me worry if there might come a day where I'm not able to support him. That would never happen of my own volition. But sometimes a girl gets paranoid, okay? But before we get too deep into this video, if there's anyone new watching this, hello and thank you for watching up to this point. If you'd like, you can watch my older videos talking about my annual anniversaries with Hyunsuk, but I'm sure inevitably I'll end up doing a recap, because I am the type of person who enjoys reminiscing through all of the memories that I have with Hyunsuk, especially since it's been 4 years now. When I first saw Hyunsuk, I already knew that he was special and that it was going to be something long-lasting rather than a short thing, but still, seeing as I've made it to 4 years with him feels really special to me. Still to this day I don't think I've ever felt quite the instant connection to someone like I had the moment I saw Hyunsuk. Sure, I've had people that I grew to like over time, but nobody is still impacting me in the way that Hyunsuk is. Years after finding him, I think the feeling of having an instantaneous click, the moment you see a person, and with that click you feel deep in your heart, the knowing that they'll be a big part of your life. I mean, instances like that are quite rare. Some might not even get to experience it once, which makes me feel all the more grateful to have all the experiences that I have had as a fan of him, even in such a long span of time. I still harbor the same feelings towards him that I have from the beginning, yet I do believe they've strengthened as time passed. These changes manifest in different ways though. I feel like each year, heck even each day, is quite different. I feel like there's always things I can learn from Hyunsuk, and when there's days I can't learn anything from him, I'm just glad to have his presence, because sometimes I truly do need it greatly. In that sense, not too much has changed. Admittedly, I'm a little dependent on Hyunsuk, which arguably can be considered as weird, and everyone is entitled to their opinions, but if you've been following these videos yearly, you know that Hyunsuk was the one to pull me out of the deepest and darkest parts of my life. An abyss quite dark and ominous that it felt like I could never claw my way out, even if I had wanted to do so, but at some point, I just gave up, and wanted life to pass me by. At a certain point you just become fed up, and if you don't have something or someone pushing you in a better direction, you have no desire to keep going. Well, at least I know I can say that's how my experience was personally. As everyone is aware, depression manifests differently person to person, but at least in my case, that's how I felt, at least the dumbed down version for YouTube. Could I add more? Absolutely, but that's not the highlights I want to make. Seeing Hyunsuk in those first initial moments was the first time in a long while I felt that my soul had awakened, and I couldn't help but naturally be drawn to him. As you guys are all well aware, but even back in YGTB era, Hyunsuk just had this distinguished charisma that set him apart from the other trainees, not to speak against them in any way, because they all absolutely had their own special quirks. But to me personally, I just felt it set Hyunsuk apart. I felt myself looking over to him every time he was in the frame, and when he wasn't, I was eagerly awaiting for more scenes with him. His talent, his kindness, his charisma, all of these things were very apparent, even in the initial moments of finding him. I feel even if you're drawn to someone, Per se it takes time to become fully enamored with them. I've had that be the case with some other idols, and some wrestlers even, but even though I took a liking to them, it wasn't instantaneous in the way that it was with Hyunsuk, or anything with him. I remember watching all of those YGTB episodes, and becoming impatient at the realization that it was an ongoing show, and that I had to wait for episodes, but being able to support him through the show like that, it made me happy. I know that I had no way of directly cheering him on. That boy will never know of my existence, even now, which is fine by the way. Knowing the type of person I am, it's probably better Hyunsuk never knows I exist, but I digress. I was happy about it since I believe if I spoke positively enough of him, I'd be able to send good energy to him. Just putting that out there. I hope the universe would just send my good energy and positive vibes towards him, even if it'd be insignificant. I just wanted to send the slightest bit of good energy to him even from the beginning. I had a strong desire to help him. Since the immediate moment I found him, he was helping me through a lot of stuff I wasn't able to move through on my own, so naturally as I supported him through the show and learned more about him, my spirits lifted gradually and I became a happier person while he was in my life. It was almost ironic that I found Hyunsuk in the final day of November, since it leads into December, Christmas time, a month associated with being together with your loved ones. Gift giving, we all know it, which looking back on it now, it was quite appropriate. I always considered Hyunsuk my gift from the universe. Heck, he always felt like a guardian angel in my eyes. Since he was able to save me and help me through a lot of things, his talents are a big reason why I admire him. But his kind personality is what I think made my heart want to connect to his. I know early on, I made a simple little Instagram fan page, wanting to give back to him in any way possible. It started out as silly postings, just little things. I know initially I kept my big thoughts to myself, but later on that eventually became a place where I shared my writing, and as I always wanted to do, I tried to spread positivity and love for him, since that's something I often see him doing. I wanted to spread love to not only him, but other people within the fandom. Already within the short span of finding Hyunsuk, he gave me my motivation back to be social, and running a fan page properly was something I hadn't done in proper long while. But for him, it came as a natural thought, and unbeknownst to me, this was a time before I started writing those letters for him, that I still write to this day. As December 2018 passed, I felt my love for Hyunsuk growing increasingly. It was a nice feeling to have so much positivity back into my heart after such a long period of unpleasantries, and each episode of the show that came out, I found new reasons to love him, and in between new episodes I did my best to dig through and find new content to watch, because it honestly did help me a lot. But by the time the 1st of January rolled around, I started 2019 by doing my first daily letter for Hyunsuk, which I just simply thought would serve the same purpose as the fan page had, spreading more good energy to him. But naturally I couldn't post my whole line of thinking on the internet, so I thought it'd be nice to put more of my thoughts into a letter. It could serve a multi-purpose of both doing what I thought would send good energy to him, and expressing myself more thoroughly, getting out my love and energy in a way I know wouldn't bother those around me. Writing those letters still brings me a lot of joy, even to this day. Sure, I know he doesn't read them, but I truly do believe in sending out good energy, etc. Even if this energy was to reach him, I'm sure it wouldn't be much more than a little bit of an energy boost. But honestly, if I could even do the smallest thing for him, I'd be so enthralled. He's done so much for me. And this is speaking back in 2019 when I first initially started my daily letters. Imagine how these sentiments have grown since I first started writing. But as you guys know, the day Hyunsuk got announced as a member of Treasure was a really special day. Of course for him the most, but even after the time that's passed, it's so vivid in my mind. I feel in the time I've found Hyunsuk, at least in things regards to him, my memory has grown so much sharper, just because he's made the world around me more vivid and more worth remembering so long as he's around. Hyunsuk truly does make the world more beautiful. The crisp January air at night, the stars shining extra brightly, all of that from the night Hyunsuk was announced into Treasure. All of that is still so clear to me. I become so nostalgic when I think about how I used to go for night runs, just because I know I went for one the night Hyunsuk got announced, and I still feel like finding a literal, shiny red plastic heart Felt like some kind of omen for him. And yes, I still have it in the same bag I wore that night. Could that be considered silly? Most likely, but not that I care looking like a fool. I just love expressing myself for how I feel about Hyunsuk. Even if he's never to be aware I exist, but I'll always feel like the universe guided me to Hyunsuk from the beginning and through the moments with him. Because getting home exactly at 9:59 before the post dropped, announcing him into the original 7 members of Treasure, that within itself felt like quite a special moment, something I'll never forget. That's for darn sure. I was so relieved though. I knew that whatever happened with him, I'd follow and support him wherever it was that he went, but knowing he made it to finally debut with YG as he wanted, I was so thrilled for him. Being there with him as a fan, to support him through these moments, I'll always be glad I found him when I did, though initially, I did have a little guilt about not being around during Mixneen as time passed. I definitely feel glad I found him when I did. I feel like the universe introduced him to me when I needed him most, and I was still able to be there to support him through the time he was on YGTB. But back then, my self-esteem honestly was worse than it is now. I felt guilty for not being there back then. As well, I watched Mixneen around February, wanting to see him since there wasn't much content being put up around them, but my heart ached for him. It honestly did seem like such a hard time, but he did so well. One thing about Hyunsuk is that he's always had such a immense talent. Every moment I've seen of him, even the oldest clips you can find, he's always had such a unique air about him and such a talent that's hard to find. I think he's one of the most unique idols, just because he's so amazingly skilled. The way he performs is like he was born to be an idol. There's no other explanation for it in my mind. He's just living his dream and what I think he was also meant to do. Hyunsuk is truly a blessing to the whole world, and I'm so glad that he chose to debut so we could all witness his talent. The more I dug through these various contents, I felt myself becoming way more attached to him. And with this attachment, I felt the growing sense reaffirming my initial thought of when I first saw him, that yeah, this boy will most definitely be an important figure in my life. So with each passing moment, I became more grateful for him. So doing things like my fanpage was important to me, so I felt like I could do things for him. But you know what else happened around January? That's right, you guys. I can't say exactly when, but I know it was around here when started editing. Here and there. Mind you, nothing too frequent. I just mostly started with the intention of wanting to go and rewatch Hyunsuk moments I enjoyed, but ended up making videos for some of the other members I liked too. And as you guys know, we see where my YouTube went, so I pretty much view it as I did my fanpage back in the day. Something I can do to promote Treasure but also try and spread good energy for Hyunsuk. Of course I like to do so for the other members as well. And as I said, I spent February digging for stuff prior to YGTB, wanting to learn more about Hyunsuk since I know there was things waiting to be discovered, and by this point I felt fully enamored with Mr. Choi. I had never felt any feelings like this before finding Hyunsuk, so it was a nice and fresh feeling, but it also just simply felt nice to have some meaning back into my life, and something to keep me going, which I had been lacking before. March of 2019 was a defining moment for me as well, at least in the sense that I know I had found another way to feel more indebted to Hyunsuk, because up to that moment, I had just spent my time supporting him, and the only turbulence I had felt was any emotional roller coaster happening during YGTB, but nothing in regards to me. Up until this point my birthday is in March, and I never really look forward to my birthdays. But I felt it was special in some sense because it was my first one as a fan of Hyunsuk, and Treasure in general, but by this point I was mostly focused on Hyunsuk since it was so early on. But I spent that day with some hopes that I could spend it with some of my friends that I'd made from running my fanpage for Hyunsuk, and I know I wanted to talk all about spending my first birthday as his fan. You guys know how I soft rant, 'cause that's how I'm doing it right now. But the universe was against me on my own birthday, and bear with me because I am definitely aware how silly this may sound, but Instagram was down for the day, so I basically spent my 17th birthday sulking and feeling lonely. Of course my parents spent time with me and whatnot, but I wanted to spend my birthday with my friends too. But in moments where you feel sad and someone brings you comfort, it's only natural to feel more attached to them afterwards, right? That was definitely the case here. Although I still felt a bit of disappointment after that day passed, I was grateful to Hyunsuk by the end of it since I felt like he salvaged a lot of it. But ironically I feel like I haven't had a good birthday since then, lol. But even though my birthday happened in a bit of an unfortunate sense, my 17th year was actually my happiest age, and I feel like I'd do anything to go back to it, and nobody ever asks me why I considered my year as 17 as my best. But I feel everyone probably already knows it's because of Hyunsuk, of course. Although 2019 was a bit of a quiet year in regards to Treasure's activities, I felt this was a time where every day was one that I felt my heart becoming more enthralled by Hyunsuk with each passing second, despite the lack of content after all. They say absence makes the heart grow fonder, and I know I spent a lot of that year watching old videos, going through my pictures, and making my best efforts to run my fan page, and no matter how impatient I got, I reminded myself that it must be tremendously worse for the boys themselves, since they're the ones who are trying to make their debut, not us. Even though us Tooms love them very dearly, none of us could have known how they felt back then. So I never let my impatience show because I always had that thought in the back of my mind. Fast forward to 2020 however, and we're finally able to receive new content of our boys, and that was one of the peaks of my excitement. The trailer for Treasure Map just had me kicking my feet and giggling. The show started out strong and with each week it got better and better, and always gave me something to look forward to, not to mention the outpour of other content that we also received back then. And do y'all remember the Treasure editorial photo shoots? I still have some of those on my wall. I asked my dad to print them from his job since we don't have a printer at home, and I have a whole pre-debut section of Hyunsuk pictures on my wall before they had their official merch come out. And those pictures always gave me so much more energy than anything else in my room ever could have done. No offense to my plushies though, love y'all. But anyway, despite the pandemic and all of the other chaos that happened in early 2020, I still felt so much joy because we spent it with Treasure, and after such a dry period of time with no content in 2019, it felt like a gift from the heavens, and I savored every content so greatly and tried my best to be super thankful for it. After all, I know what it felt like to be without content and it's not the best feeling, because I like feeling close with Hyunsuk. I feel like when I'm watching content of him, listening to their music or anything else, I have my human safety net and like nothing could possibly ever go awry in Hyunsuk's presence. But I also didn't want to be greedy. Mind you, I understand we can't get content all the time. That's always in the back of my mind as well. A prominent thought I always have is even when there's times where we have dryness with no content, so long as Hyunsuk is in my heart, I'm never truly apart with him, so to speak. No matter what we receive or don't, he's always on my mind and what pushes me to get through every single day, and not a thing has changed from the first day I saw him to all these years later. But I'm always grateful for how he's managed to provide me with comfort, inspiration and all the things alike. Considering that all of 2020 wasn't the most pleasant for me, and I'm fully aware I talked about this in prior videos, but 2020 was also the year I lost an inspiration to me. When a wrestler I liked passed away in May, I feel like this was the first really unpleasant thing that had happened in a long while. Considering that the time I had Hyunsuk, it had only been minor inconveniences up to that point. Even though I remember my birthday being unpleasant in 2019, obviously someone you care about passing away is on a way different scale. It was the first big thing that happened, and looking to Hyunsuk wasn't really the first thing on my mind. I was just really grieving Hana for a while, since I had been aspiring to be a wrestler a long while before I ever found Hyunsuk, and I truly don't get attached to people as easy as you might think. I just simply have a few people that my heart really grows close with, and Hana was one of them. So losing her, and in such an unfair way as well, it's still hard for me to talk about. But Hyunsuk was what got me out of my funk, essentially. Now was it immediate? Of course not, but having him there was at least one form of comfort I had. And the first time I remember feeling normal again was thanks to a specific episode of Treasure Map, episode 25. Just watching them play around together and bond and all of that, something about it just resonated with me and left me feeling warm, and after 2 months, I felt a first genuine happiness. I think after Hannah passed away it was honestly really hard to pull me out of the deep funk I was in. Although arguably I feel I'm still not quite over what happened to her despite it being 2 years since then. But I've moved on in the sense that I'd like it if people could remember her for the talent she had and the matches she left for us to watch, rather than what happened to her. But Hyunsuk was most definitely a part of my process of healing, and I'm always thankful to him for it. But luckily for me, Treasure's debut just so happened to be a month after that Treasure map was. Fast forward to the 7th of August, which is my dad's birthday by the way. The long-awaited debut of Treasure was finally happening. You bet your bottom dollar that I was up way early in the morning to see that countdown live stream. I went to bed early just so I could be awake for the special moment. I found myself early up awake enough to see pictures from fan sites of them going in, and I remember grinning and smiling from ear to ear as I watched that whole thing. It was hard to believe for me that it was finally happening, but I felt so happy for Hyunsuk. In my head I was just relieving all of the things that he went through, and it made me emotional that the boy I hold so dear to my heart was finally, after so long, getting to achieve a huge goal of his, and he got to do so with people very important to him. It just made me feel very warm and happy, and I found myself in tears after the live stream and watching boy. I honestly think it came out so splendidly, and it felt so amazing to finally be listening to a proper Treasure album. And as you guys know, I mentioned my letters earlier. I started a letter before the live stream. I managed to write during the live stream, because I've developed myself a skill where I can type without looking at the screen. And once again, I was writing after as well. I just felt so overcome with emotion that I wanted to document all of it. But ironically, I get so embarrassed by my own writings I never reread them nor do I rewatch videos like these. But I gotta say, it feels so good to make them. I don't know if I'm being too selfish or not while I make this. Certainly I hope not. I just know I talk about my own feelings a lot. These videos are made to talk about my personal experience as Hyunsuk's fan in 4 years. However, I feel like it'd be better to make these videos to highlight all that Treasure has done in 4 years, though I guess it'd be fine to be a mixture of both, as well. But then again, if this video was purely made just to boast about Hyunsuk's accomplishments, and Treasure as a whole, well quite frankly, there's no arguing that it could be made way longer, and I love doing my best to hype them up to the best of my ability, since they work very hard and deserve all of the praise. Just sometimes it's hard to keep everything on the same line of thought. My thoughts are all over the place but I know the main thing that I'm feeling. Quite similarly to all of the years prior to this one, I'm always happy to have Hyunsuk. I just hope I don't sound ungrateful or too selfish when I make these videos, especially if I don't highlight certain things, but I try my best to get everything across that I'm thinking, even from the beginning when I felt like I was doing my best to show it. I've never been too quite sure whether or not I expressed my feelings across to you the way that I feel them, in my heart, but that's quite difficult a skill to be honest, though I think Hyunsuk most definitely has it. Whenever he's expressing himself, I think he just speaks very eloquently in the way he talks. You can just feel the emotions he's trying to get across. Even through his Twitter posts you can feel his warmth and kindness. I feel like I could cry every time he does those sweet weekly posts checking up on us, how our week went, and so on. But that truly is just the type of guy that Hyunsuk is. I truly do love him for his talents and how unique and cool he is. But he truly has such a warm soul, that's unique in not only the idol industry, but the world as a whole. Think about it now, while you watch this video. Think about how Hyunsuk is always looking out for the others around him, whether that be his own members, his other friends, his family, of course, and even treasure makers that he talks to at fan signs, or staff members when they film. He treats everyone with the same kindness and always tries to hear everyone out, and always has their well-being in mind. To me, I really do see him as one of the most selfless people that I know. Someone who loves his group, his fans and the people around him wholeheartedly, and someone who always maintains his positivity a lot of the time. Even when things can get hard, you always see Hyunsuk not letting it get him too down. At least this is how I view him. But when you hear all of these things, how many people do you know like that in the world? Whether it's other idols that you may be fans of, people within your friend circle or members of your family, How many people do you know like that? Because when I ask myself this very same question, the only answer I can come to is Hyunsuk. It's not that I think less of anyone else. It's just simply to me Hyunsuk is the best to me in all areas. So it's only natural I look up to him the most, and feel the most warmth from watching him. And it always makes me feel secure, knowing that whatever happens within this world, my social life, any of those things, I'll always have my own personal safety net to fall back on, and I feel like I get in my own head a lot, so trust me, having Hyunsuk in my life has been very important, but even in my saddest moments, I always feel a definite comfort from having him around, and just looking at Hyunsuk is always a constant reminder for me that things can, and will, get better. But pretty much I think that would sum up my 4 years I've spent as Hyunsuk's fan, just supporting him to the fullest extent that I can. I have plenty of love to get out since most of the positive energy in my heart is what he's put back into it. Considering how I felt so dry and lifeless beforehand, I really don't know how I handled myself before finding Hyunsuk, but I'm so glad that the universe allowed me to find him, and thus, the best person in the world, in my eyes, entered my life, and I truly hope that I'm always able to support him. That's the best thing for me. I just hope that it's very obvious that I care about Hyunsuk so deeply. I'm always worried that I can't express myself to the fullest extent that I'd like to, but alas, I think that pretty much concludes this video. Now would I like to talk about Hyunsuk and the extent of how much I love him for a little longer? Sure, but I don't wish to drag out the topic too much. Despite me loving to make these videos, I don't wanna make anyone uncomfortable or bored, but I doubt many watch this to begin with. But I truly do like making these videos a huge amount since this is an important part of my life and how Hyunsuk has genuinely touched my heart. But the anniversary of the day I found him is the best excuse to let myself indulge in talking about him. But hey, if you watched this long, I appreciate it and I hope you enjoyed it. Please take care of yourselves, okay? I'll see you next time. Till then, bye bye.